broadcast network, AFTERBUZZ TV. Over 20 million weekly downloads in over 150 countries, and your number one source for after-show entertainment. AFTERBUZZ TV, the destination for TV superfans. Producing after shows for over 300 of your favorite TV shows, interviewing celebrities and showrunners, and bringing you behind-the-scenes exclusives. All thanks to E! Entertainment's Maria Menounos, producer Kevin Undergaro, and internet leader Akamai. Now, let the buzz begin!
What is happening, y'all? Welcome to the very first episode of the official after show for Second Chance on Fox, right here at AfterBuzz. For the entirety, you hear some credence. Here we go. That'll be a recurring theme through the course of this series premiere episode of Second Chance. For the entirety of the first season, we'll be recapping every episode, bringing you our opinions, our analysis, and if you're liking it, we'd love for you to do the same thing. Find us on Twitter, follow us on Instagram. If you're watching us on YouTube, leave a comment. If you're listening on iTunes, rate, download, subscribe, leave a review, all of that good stuff. We want to hear what you think. My name is Ty Matthews. You can find me on Twitter, on Instagram, at TyMatthewsPMA. But of course, I couldn't do this alone. I've got two lovely, and talented co-hosts with me. Why don't you guys tell these fantastic viewers who you are and where they can find you on that wonderful thing called the internet.
I'm Jamie Banks, and you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at JamieBanks_.
Hey, I'm Hayley O'Connor. You can find me on Twitter at Hayley O'Connor and on Instagram at Hayley from Earth. And if you're thinking all the good names were taken, you would be right.
She is from Earth, y'all, and she's got two eyes.
That's right.
So, this is a brand new show created by Rand Ravich, who's got quite the eclectic resume. He wrote and directed The Astronaut's Wife, starring Johnny Depp. He wrote Candyman, Farewell to the Flesh. And then most recently, he created the series Life and Crisis. And so he's got a pretty varied resume. Not only that, we've got a pretty phenomenal cast. We've got Rob Kaczynski from True Blood. We've got Philip Baker Hall, who's been in a bajillion things. We've got Tim DeKay, who is one of my personal favorites, back from the Carnival days on HBO, one of my absolute favorite shows. And some fantastic performances from Adir Kalyan and Dilshad Vadsaria.
I love her.
You mentioned that when I first told you about this show.
I was really excited she was in this because I'm sure everyone here watched Greek, but she was the star of that show, Greek. She was the villain. She was lovable. So I was really excited she was in this.
Interesting. I'll have to check that out. Before we even get into the episode, before we start recapping scene by scene, because we've got a lot to unpack, y'all, what did you guys think of the show just when you first heard about it? Going in, hearing the logline, hearing the concept, which is basically a 75-year-old cop is murdered and is brought back to life by two billionaire twins. So
when I heard that, I thought, oh, cool. And even right from the beginning of the show, it's a 75-year-old man. I thought, it's just going to be a 75-year-old revived man, which was stupid of me to think because it's Hollywood, so of course it's going to be a hottie. But right. So I was like, oh, that's an interesting one. Like, watch a 75-year-old doing stuff. But just a super buff, strong 75-year-old. That's right, yeah.
Like the $6 million man if he was a senior citizen.
Right. So I was wrong. So pleasantly surprised, though, because Robert Kaczynski.
Sure, absolutely. What do you think, Jamie?
I actually did think about Frankenstein because I knew that the first title was called the Frankenstein Code.
Sure.
And so I think it is similar because scientists are bringing back a man to life. And so that was similar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. When I first heard about it, obviously, originally called Frankenstein, then the Frankenstein Code, then Looking Glass, all very nebulous, all kind of vague. Now, the slightly less vague Second Chance.
Appealing. Mass appeal. Everyone wants second chances.
Exactly.
So, all right.
And we open with a VO. Second chances can be a real monster. And then we flash it right back to 3 months earlier. We hear that CCR that we heard at the top of the show.
We just keep hearing it.
Once again, recurring
night.
Theme throughout the episode. And we get to meet Jimmy Pritchard. And Jimmy Pritchard, he's 75. He's not doing much of anything.
He doesn't remain 75. We're all as dumb as me.
He loves smoking. He loves drinking. He loves music, specifically blaring his music so loud that his neighbors start to complain. And then we get a glimpse of his family life. We meet his son, Duval, played by Tim DeKay, who, once again, awesome. And there seems to obviously be a little bit of a rift there. They both seem to be in law enforcement. Jimmy, formerly so. Duval, now part of the FBI. And it looks like Jimmy's even working on his own son's cases, which kind of rubs him the wrong way. And then we see Jimmy's granddaughter Gracie as well, Duval's daughter Gracie, and it seems like there's a little bit warmer of a relationship there. She loves Grandpa.
Much more. She loves Grandpa. Grandpa loves her. It looks like immediately. I mean, she's helping feed his drinking problem a little bit.
Yes,
so
also
great.
That.
That's some love. Like I thought that was a little funny, but that was good. But it seems like not a whole lot of love between father and son there right away.
Right.
They set that
up. It was
up.
also interesting because Jimmy wanted to keep. Or Duval wanted to keep Jimmy away from Gracie.
Right. I think he can tell he's a little bit of a bad influence. He doesn't want,
A little bit.
Yeah, and so...
Well, who else is there in that first opening scene is this hot blonde woman.
We will get to Bettina.
Okay,
we will get to Bettina.
I'm ready for the hot blonde women.
Before we get to that, there's the case that Jimmy is working on, Duval's case that he's working on, does come into play a little bit later on. We've got 6 bank jobs in the last 12 months.
Okay, if you want to get all plotty about
dead
it.
Security guard. There's a lot of plot. We got to get to it. 6 bank jobs in the last year. There's a dead security guard, and not a single person's been locked up. So that's kind of what is happening in this world right now. That's what Jimmy's working on. And so obviously a little bit of foreshadowing. But then, of course, we meet Bettina.
Okay, thanks.
Who says very unconvincingly that she's a member of Jimmy, or in fact, Jimmy actually says that she's a member of his music appreciation club.
Well, I didn't realize. I think you didn't realize either. And that first scene, I didn't really think it was weird. I mean, I didn't think it was a music appreciation club. She's so much hotter and younger than him, but... I didn't think it was what they set it up to be later, that she is a lady of the night. It really wasn't clear. And as you just mentioned, like, he blares his music really loud, so maybe she's... I didn't realize what she was right away. Is my point.
That's true. We don't really get a lot of clues right off the bat.
So, but then she asks the
Gracie,
granddaughter. Yeah.
She asks Gracie, "Are you a member of the club too?" And I think we all were like, "Oh, hang on, wait a minute."
The knowledge now.
Because I think there was a lot of confusion throughout the episode on how old Gracie was.
Yeah,
I
but
think
she's doing a college tour.
We landed on about 17 to 18 possibly.
So a realistic casting maybe for once, that like she probably, that's what a 17-year-old looks like,
looks
but
so young.
we're used to them being like
and
25.
Especially, not to jump too far ahead, but especially the fact that Duval is coaching her soccer team makes her seem a lot younger as well.
Yeah.
And the fact that she addresses Jimmy as Mr. Hey, Mr., do I know you?
Yeah.
It's a little bit, yeah.
Yeah,
but
that's right. Okay.
We'll get to all that. But we get a little bit of lines that kind of hit on some of the major themes of the show. And Bettina says, when she's kind of reassuring Duval about their relationship, she says, "Oh, don't worry, he's too old to do much of anything." And I feel like one of the themes of this show, and possibly unintended, is maybe an overarching commentary on how we treat our elderly. You know, it seems like
we treat them like they can't bone anymore.
Right. Well, it seems like, because she says he's too old to do much of anything, like at all, and we do see him just kind of sitting in a chair.
That's true.
Not doing much of anything.
But then following scene, he's in Duval's house, right, when he ultimately meets his end, sort of. But he's in Duval's. He's not decrepit. He can move around. He can do stuff. He can hold a knife.
And we'll get to the scene later on. But a little later on, when he's kind of ruminating on that scene on the bridge, he says, "I was just an old man. And they threw me like a bag of dirt because I was an old man."
Okay.
He keeps hitting on this theme.
Fair enough.
What do you think, Jamie?
I see the point. I think that could be a reference to how we appreciate or don't appreciate the elderly.
Sure. And so, yeah, I think obviously with him being brought back in such a young, virile form,
very virile.
It seems like now all of a sudden he has worth, But at the end of the scene, we also get Gracie saying, she leans into her grandpa and she says, "You'll always be the sheriff." And I think that's another one of the themes that keeps kind of getting hit on over the course of the episode.
The corrupt sheriff, as far as we know so far.
And that's we
evidence planting.
We get a little bit of witness intimidation. We get some evidence planting, and we're not necessarily sure yet, at least in the season, if it's entirely justified.
Yep, we do know that he justifies it as wanting to help the people and protect the people.
Sure.
So I really would like to know specifically what he did and why he thought that was helping everyone.
Yeah,
Right,
I think
right.
they're gonna go into that in further episodes, I'm sure. But for now, I'm taking it at face value and screw that guy.
Exactly.
He was a mean old cunt.
So from here we go to Looking Glass, this giant kind of almost the Facebook parallel, obviously, this billion-dollar social media company.
Intro with a guy riding in on a razor scooter.
We see Otto scooting around, just scooting around.
Just scooting, straight scooting.
He meets his twin sister Mary, who's she obviously right off the bat seems kind of like sort of the caretaker of the two, and he's not sure what the look on her face is, and she tells him that the shareholders want her to start doing media interviews to kind of ease their minds because Otto has sort of become MIA. He's the brains behind Looking Glass, but he's sort of disappeared into himself, and everyone's kind of getting worried about that.
Yeah, I think you mentioned that he's not sure what the look on her face is. This kind of is a cue that he can't understand social cues, and he asks her, "What's the look on your face?" So that's our first sort of insight that he has some social difficulties.
Right. And not only that, but we find out that they even have their own language. They've got twin speak.
Yeah, do you guys know any twins? Are either of you twins? No. Is this a thing? Because when I was a kid, I remember people being like, twins have their own language.
I think it might...
Is it real? Because I wanted that so hard.
I think their specific twin speak might be...
They made up a thing.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
established that in this. But, twin speak in life, maybe.
Hey, who knows? You could be. But he explains that the reason that he's gone MIA and the reason that he's sort of disappeared from view is that he's working on bringing dead fish back to life, basically. He wants to jump straight from fish to human trials.
Yep. She names all the animals that come in between. He's like, fish to
No,
human.
he wants to jump
Easy.
right past from fish to humans, skipping mice and rats and chimps because Mary's too sick. They can't wait.
Sure, so just do that fish math and put it right in there.
She is looking phenomenal for how sick she's supposed to be.
Yes, she is.
That is, a really good looking late stage cancer.
Well, we don't know. Maybe they have. We're in present day ish, but their tech company is a little.
It could be
forward,
yeah.
right?
It could be maybe a little like Black Mirror, where it's sort of this kind of nebulous trip into the future. But yeah, so he wants to basically play God and bring these creatures back to life. And I think we'll get more into the ethical and moral complications in that kind of Frankenstein moment that we get to. But what do you guys think of Otto and Mary and their relationship with each other?
Well, definitely Otto's a type that I think we see in real life all the time.
Sure.
These tech giants that a little socially awkward, can't quite handle the public eye. So I think that's a realistic character, definitely.
I think Otto is so dependent on his sister that he really can't live without her, and I think that's one of the main reasons why he wants to test on Jimmy and bring him back to save his sister, but also to save himself because he can't live without her.
Sure, yeah, definitely. And so after that, after we leave Otto and Mary, we see Jimmy getting home at night. He's looking through newspapers detailing the circumstances surrounding his stepping down from the force and the kind of the shady backstory that we're given for him. Meanwhile, he hears a commotion, sees two burglars rifling through Duval's
really
things.
high level evil burglars. Once they start talking, they just are full evil, 100%.
If they had mustaches, they'd be twirling them.
That's right.
For sure.
That's right.
But it's Duval's home. I forget that it's Duval's
Yeah.
home that Jimmy's looking through.
So what was he doing? Do we even know? What was he looking for there in his son's
I don't know.
house? He knew they were not going to be there.
I think he was on to Strayburn a little bit. I'm not sure why or how, but I think we get a little bit of that later on in the episode, that he never trusted him. So maybe he was looking for, he was, in fact, I think that's what it is. He was working on that case, the bank robbery case. And so I think he might have been looking for some sort of paperwork that maybe Duvall had overlooked.
Yeah, maybe he was looking for evidence that could be used against him and wanted to eliminate it.
Sure. So he stumbles across these ne'er-do-wells, and he threatens to throw a knife at them.
If he can manage
If he
it,
can
though.
remember
He's
how.
old, guys, in case you forgot.
He says, we'll both find out if I remember how to throw this knife.
Which is good to tell your opponent when you're fighting for your life.
Cops 30 years ago, were they throwing knives?
Oh, yeah, the knife throwing force, of course.
Was he a cop in the circus? Just like, dun, 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 dun.
That's right. We'll see. Just balance an apple on your head, burglar.
Sure. And so he threatens him with this very, very creative method of execution and gets pistol whipped for his efforts.
Sure. He had it coming.
Of course. And one of the burglars tells the other to clean this place up like it never happened. Jimmy responds, "Go to hell." Once again, another motif that'll come back later on. The burglar says, "You know what? I got a better idea." So they take him to
I'm gonna throw you off a bridge.
They take him to a bridge. They douse him in alcohol, and they basically stage his own suicide.
Did they douse him in alcohol?
They did.
Missed that.
They did. They had I had missed that at first too, but they had a bottle of alcohol, and the guy is sort of narrating like, "Man, it's
You were
sad.
drinking too much
Oh,
tonight.
yeah.
Yeah,
I heard
you were so depressed
Right.
after what you put your family through. I'm surprised it took you so long to do it." And they're just like dousing him.
Well, but then
in
they put him
alcohol.
in the river. You would think.
You
so
would think.
goodbye alcohol residue. I don't know.
These aren't the genius ne'er-do-wells that we've seen in other procedurals. And so they, he says, "My son will get you," and they say, and Strayburn, who we later on find out is Strayburn, he says, "No, Mr. Pritchard, he won't." And with that, they chuck him over a bridge, like, as he says later, a bag of dirt.
Like a bag of dirt.
And his life
He is a little
literally...
bit of a dirt bag. That
There
we
you
think
go.
so far.
There you go. Hitting it right on the notes. But his life literally flashes before his eyes.
There's not much there.
There's, he's shooting toy guns as a kid, and he's throwing a football, and I think he's in the military.
Yeah, I think
at
he was
some
a
point.
Marine.
Yeah.
And scene.
Right.
That's your life.
So how
None
do we,
of your kids, nothing.
Right. So how do we feel? I mean, obviously, there's this kind of fractured relationship between him and Duvall. There's this unfinished case. He had to resign in shame. I mean, we got to think he's not in a great place at his time of death, right?
No.
I mean, what do we think that he's thinking in those final moments?
Boy. Oh, boy. Oh.
If we can get real heavy.
I mean, no, I'm going to defer to you on this.
It's just interesting that no family memories did come up.
Right.
I don't know if he thought to himself,
That's a good point.
I wish I had better memories with my son or something like that. Nothing of his wife. So maybe he thought he looked back on with some regret.
That's a really good point.
It's all him in his youth.
And we forgot.
And then he gets to relive some of his youth. So
very true.
That's
good point.
That's what he values. Maybe.
I hadn't even thought about that, and we had missed it. But earlier on, we find out that the wife has passed away, and so it's pretty much just Jimmy Duvall and Gracie and Helen.
Yeah, you would think he'd have a wedding memory or
Sure.
something like that.
That's a really good.
Or when his wife is giving birth.
Right, exactly, yeah. So he, obviously he's donezo. He's on the donezo list. But after that we hear news reports. Everyone just kind of takes it for granted that it was a suicide. There doesn't seem to be much of an investigation into it, but that could also speak to the dirtiness of the FBI agents as well.
Mm-hmm. But he's easy to buy as a suicide. I mean, he had a disgraceful resignation and
also is an alcoholic.
Yeah.
Right.
So open and shut. He killed himself.
What a man. Are you
breaking the
stuff
desk
already? Come on, Hayley.
I'm just a guest. I won't be back.
So we go back to the twins. We go back to the story of the Goodwins on Piers Morgan. Piers Morgan with a little cameo appearance.
Yeah, nice.
And we see Mary giving that interview that she was talking about earlier to appease the shareholders.
Yep.
We find out that Looking Glass is a $10 billion social media giant with 1 billion users. Like, that's not a small fraction of the planet's population. It's like, I feel like that's bigger than Facebook is.
Yeah, I think they got
world.
China and India in the markets
They
that
locked
like,
it.
the other
They
ones
locked
can't
it,
tell.
sure. And Pierce is sort of, he's really digging in and he's really asking about Otto, you know?
Right.
And meanwhile, we see Otto watching from his little control room, communicating with Mary via a little Google Glass sort of a deal. And he says that he's found a donor. And at first, and let me know if you guys agree, was I like, is Piers Morgan the donor? Is he saying?
You're looking right at
Is
him.
he saying? That's what I thought.
Yeah.
I thought that whatever she was looking at was analyzing them,
Yeah,
like
it
Terminator
read his
style,
DNA.
like Terminator style.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
thought maybe like, are they gonna kill Piers Morgan?
I
Did
did
you guys
not-
get any of that?
I did not think that,
All right,
but
that's
that's pretty
fair.
funny.
Probably
That's fair.
obviously the guy they just threw off the bridge in the previous scene.
I didn't. Yeah. Who knows? Yeah.
But then her answering him is looking to whatever camera and just giving a slight no.
It just like
really? You had to really know they would
Wouldn't-
cut to you just
I feel
then?
like wouldn't Piers Morgan have gone? Hey,
What's the matter?
Hey, what are you doing? Are you signaling to someone? Giving a little Carol Burnett? But Mary says no, and Otto kind of dumping a little bit of exposition. He's talking to himself, but he's also talking to Arthur.
Just dumping it out.
Doesn't she know that by the time we find another donor, it'll be too late? You know, she's so far along.
She's dying that much.
And once again, looks so good.
She does look
so
good.
far along in her sickness. But she won't give the go-ahead for human testing. Why do you guys think that is?
I think it shows how caring a person she is. They've only tested on fish thus far, so they really don't know that will work on a human. And so I think it just shows how selfless she is. She doesn't want to risk another human's life for her own.
Sure. What do you think?
I mean, it's the ultimate don't play God sort of thing. You
Sure.
don't bring people back from the dead.
Sure,
When
sure,
they're
sure.
dead, you're supposed to leave them dead.
When they're dead.
That's like rule one.
I feel like, yeah.
Plus, I mean, maybe, you know, it may not be that noble because, like, you don't want just the fish calculations then applied to you.
Right.
I mean, I know her time is very limited, but they've only tested on fish. Like,
Right.
fish are a far less complex organism, so it might not be nobility as much as, you know.
Is there another show? Is there another show where Mary turns into a fish? Like, that's her second chance. Is as a fish.
Not much of a chance.
It's funny. She also mentioned that her parents would be against it and that they think that you shouldn't play God and you
Sure.
would be punished. So I think she has that in the back of her mind as well.
Definitely, yeah.
Well, that was weird to me, that line.
Well, and we'll get to that.
We can't say it?
We'll-
Okay.
we'll, I don't want to jump too far because
right,
that's a
okay.
big old act break. But with Mary in New York for one more day, Otto decides to take matters into his own hands and procure the body. So camera pans to Jimmy's death certificate, body number switches. Arthur warns Otto that Mary's going to be mad, but he wants to protect his sister, so he's going to go body snatching.
He's gonna go a snatching.
And sure enough, we see Jimmy's old floating corpse just hanging
in that
out,
tank they have.
hanging out in Otto's tank, just like
a fish tank.
gigantic bulging eyes.
Yeah,
just
it's
like-
not a good look. Both actors who we see in that tank, it doesn't look good. But it seems to work, obviously. So,
Right. So Mary gets home. She's obviously not happy. She says we had no right to do this. Clearly against the playing God card, obviously. But Otto says, look, it's who we've been waiting for. His genetic variation is 1 in 10 million.
Yeah, so they established that, which I'm glad because
Right.
bringing people back from the dead is like a sort of a no stakes thing to do to your
Right.
TV show. But so it's this rare. It's 1 in 10 million.
1 in 10 million, yeah.
What's the population of Earth?
Is it 8 billion by now?
So,
something like that.
math.
There's not many.
Okay.
But I'm wondering how he knew that Jimmy had this genetic variation.
Yeah. Here's
Does
my...
he just-
No, I've got this theory,
Okay.
though, but because they invented Looking Glass
Sure,
and
sure.
they have all this information everywhere, I'm sure they get all the morgue records of whatever,
Right.
everybody that comes in, because he's looking for it, I'm sure.
Sure.
They're trying to bring people back from the dead. He's looking for this specific thing, so every dead body that comes through the system, they see it through their technology.
Right. So then we get a final moment of pleading from Otto saying, please don't leave me alone. And we kind of end on that. We go to Jimmy's funeral, where Helen, Duval's sister, is drinking very heavily. And we get kind of a sense of her relationship with him. She says the only thing that he taught her is basically how to drink, pretty much.
A useful skill.
Right.
Thanks, Dad.
Do we think that there was any moment where he might have been a good father to these children?
Well, they're setting him up as no, but I get the feeling that there's more. There's more reasoning. How did their mom die, maybe, or who knows?
There could be more
There's
to
probably
the story
more.
there.
Yeah.
Right. And we see at the funeral that Duvall is still actively working on the case. And what was interesting to me is he tells Strayburn, my dad would have wanted me to work today, which was interesting because at that point, I feel like he wouldn't really care what his dad would have wanted.
Well, I don't think he meant it in a I'm doing this for the sake of my dad. I think he meant my dad missed everything because he was always working, so he doesn't care I'm working a day, right? Like it's a little burn on. I still don't care about you, Dad.
Right. Interesting. What do you think, Jamie?
I didn't think about that. I thought he was honoring his dad in that statement.
Sure.
Interesting point.
Yeah, definitely.
No honor.
So,
no honor
no
for
honor
Dad.
in this
No
family.
way.
So we go back to the tank. We see that Mary has changed her mind. Regeneration has begun, and
Yeah,
Otto,
she didn't put up too much of a fight.
I
don't think it's that noble.
really turned a dime really quickly. But Otto refers to the body as proprietary Goodwin technology. So he's not even thinking of it as a person.
Yeah.
Arthur tells him, what should I refer to him as? Jimmy Pritchard is dead. And Otto basically says, look, he's our property now. Which is pretty nuts.
That's right. That's. I mean, it's gonna be a bulky name to call out when he goes missing or whatever.
PGT. He's old PGT. But not only that, we see Mary talking to her assistant. Her oncologist is on the line. We see that stocks for Looking Glass are up to almost $480 a share. So they're clearly doing very well.
They're fine.
But obviously, nobody knows that she's sick. It looks like at all.
The assistant knows.
Right, she knows, and
There's been no publicity about it, so nobody knows.
Right. Because I imagine shareholders will start to panic.
That's right.
They'll think that maybe Otto's going to take over. Maybe that doesn't inspire too much confidence because he's a genius, but he's not a businessman. So they haven't gone public yet. She says even Otto is not ready for the public to know. But then we head back to the tank. We see that phase 1 is complete, and we hear more of Mary's objections that, mom and dad believed in God.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so now I'll make my point.
Right, yes, there we go.
I thought that's a strange line. That's not, we believe in God. That's not like, this is
interesting.
against
I didn't
God.
even think about that.
I just thought that was really strangely specific phrasing of mom and dad believed in God.
Right.
It sounds like maybe they don't.
Right. So
but
does
honoring
that
their parents.
Does
in some
that
way.
maybe explain why they end up not having too many qualms with it?
Maybe,
because
yeah.
they're honoring their parents, not necessarily a God they don't believe
But
in.
right after that, Otto says, but they'd want us to take care of each other. And
Right.
I think that trumps the first argument.
Right, exactly. And at first I thought Otto, by doing this, was maybe being a little bit selfish, but he really does. He wants to protect his sister. I mean, it's a little bit selfish in that without his sister, he would retreat into himself.
Stay in that room that can be anything.
In his 1988 bedroom.
Yeah.
But then, they finally decide to flip the switch in the very, very Frankensteinian moment, even to the point where Mary exclaims,
It's
he's
alive."
alive,
Oh, yeah.
in twin speak.
Yeah.
And we even hear a little bit from Arthur saying, oh, you're speaking twin speak. I don't speak twin speak.
That was smart. I feel like that'll come up again, that they didn't teach their AI twin speak.
Oh, I didn't even think about that either. Very
going
good
to.
point.
It's
It's
going to.
purely between them, and
Yeah.
Arthur's going to learn.
They could teach him.
Sure.
Arthur, in a frightening way, recognizes human facial expressions better than a human does.
Right.
Arthur's scary.
Ooh,
That's my.
That's
we're just
very
putting that in.
true. Yeah.
Watch out for Arthur.
And I think, we could. I mean, we'll get into the predictions a
Okay,
little later
all right,
on, but we'll talk about Arthur.
that's it.
So we break on Act 1, and we see Jimmy waking up in what he thinks is his apartment. He reaches for his cigarettes, and Mary tells him that those cause cancer. Which she would know.
She knows.
Obviously. I don't think she was a big smoker.
No.
But she knows what causes cancer. All right. He's wondering if maybe she's a lady of the night,
Yeah.
like Bettina.
He's like, do I owe you something?
Right.
Yeah.
Did
An
I pay
apology immediately.
Yeah, right away, right now. Also, this is the point where I think Do we think Mary is named for Mary Shelley?
Yes. But also, because they still, she's obviously a noble character that but her name is Mary Goodwin. That is the most like
that's really funny.
Sweet Mary good and win. Like I would love her to become evil, but
right.
The evil fish.
The evil fish.
That's right.
When she turns into a fish, her spinoff, when she turns into a fish, she's gonna go dark.
Swim off.
We're gonna see some dark stuff from Mary. A very good one. But we, when he realizes he has stronger teeth, he has an appetite, he sees these new hands that are not his hands.
Yeah, I'm weirdly charmed by this, of like a hot, fit guy saying like old man stuff. That's my thing, apparently.
All right. Well, we learned a lot about Hayley.
He's wise.
Oh, this would usually hurt my teeth. I don't know. It's sort of charming and sweet, and he really appreciates that sandwich. Yeah.
Sure.
Live every day to the fullest.
And so when he starts to panic and he attacks Mary, and we realize that the last thing he remembered is that he did die, and she has to release a massive amount of the sedative just to knock him out. Yeah. All of the sedative.
And it lasts about 5 minutes or less.
Right.
Not a great fail-safe.
But then, so what do we think about these newfound superpowers that he has that clearly took even Mary and Otto by surprise?
Boy, I mean, he can live it up now if what he cares about is just his youth. He's got it back in spades.
Sure.
He's got a great second chance to live it up.
All right, there we go.
Ooh, calling it out.
Calling it out on the nose. Very nice. After this, he wakes up. And we realize that he's imprisoned in what seems to be like a recreation of his own apartment.
I love a good apartment beating up with your bare hands. Right. Though, that was great.
He realizes the windows are
punch through some doors.
Boarded up. The doors are boarded up. But even then, he manages to break out.
Yeah, he's very strong.
And get to the rest of the house.
That's right. So they planned, it seems like, zero for this.
Right, exactly.
Really, really poorly done, guys.
Right. And so, but then we see Mary and Otto kind of showing him on the window exactly, what people think. People think that he jumped, and Mary kind of reasons with him, look, this might not be you, but this is the best version of you. And it's almost interesting seeing that Mary went from being against it to being all right, fine with it, to now almost being a strong proponent of it.
Sure. Well, all this time passed. They showed that days and days, months probably were passing.
Right.
So I think she's probably
days.
Getting a little anxious, and you know.
And I feel like she is already invested in the project, so she's might as well just go for it 100%.
Right.
Yeah, you don't get this option a lot.
Right. And do we think that they're genuinely invested in the benefits for Jimmy, or do they see him just as a means to an end?
Oh, he's a means to an end. They're business people first and foremost.
Otto's a businessman.
That's right.
I think at first it's just to save Mary, and then when she starts to hear about his story and how his son is in trouble, then she starts to care a little bit more about his personal story.
Right. And speaking of that, he does say, my son is in trouble, and just
jumps
breaks
out
through the window. Just without a care in the world.
He sees that they think he jumped off a bridge and decides to then jump out a window.
Right. And so we see him running through the woods. He's taken in the air. We see dogs chasing after him. We think that maybe could be, the Men in Black.
It's not
Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones, but like the theoretical conspiracy, the Illuminati, whatever. I don't know. But then we see these very young, fit, attractive girls starting to hit on him, and I think he thinks,
he loves it.
All right. I can get used to this.
Sure.
Kettlebells are a thing.
Kettlebells, yeah, I'm sure he knows what they are. He couldn't even lift a knife.
Sure, yeah. And so we come back from break, and Mary is hypothesizing to Arthur that Jimmy's going to try to solve the crime. But Arthur says, I don't know.
See, Arthur Smart knows. He's gonna drink and bone and
his
be
priorities
merry.
are women, alcohol, music, and then law enforcement. So we see huge bumping party. He finds Bettina, starts flirting with her, starts learning about his own funeral, how it wasn't really that sad.
But to me, this is funny. Okay, we can get to his funeral, but I'm back to the Lady of the Knife for a minute. This is what is funny to me. It's like, oh, I'm suddenly young again. I have a massively fit body. I'm so, virile, whatever. And he thinks I can now go bone the prostitute.
Right.
Like, can't you just pick up girls regularly now? You're not 75.
No, he likes that one.
Okay. Okay. All right. Feelings.
They appreciated music together.
Fine. Just bad moon on the rise.
God damn it, Hayley. What do you think, Jamie? What do you think about him just like seeking missile right to Bettina?
I feel like he actually seeked her out at the bar just because he knew her and he wanted to get more information on his son. Maybe he saw that as his next move. I don't think he was thinking about picking her up just quite yet.
You're right.
And I think when he finds out that she was at the funeral, he becomes a little bit more interested. Like, oh, did people cry? He says, was it real sad?
Not real sad.
Apparently it wasn't. There was
Sorry,
not a lot of weeping. He wants to buy her a drink so that they can continue this conversation.
Oh, he doesn't have any money.
He's all tapped out. He witnesses a drug deal conveniently.
Do 75-year-old men know the phrase tapped out? This stuck out to me.
Maybe he learned a lot just in his walk from the woods to this party.
That is good.
Also, was he still barefoot when he was at this party? Because I think he was just in like that weird black suit.
Yeah, it said Looking Glass on it.
Yeah. But anyway, he witnesses this drug deal, drags the drug dealer into the bathroom.
Assesses that the drug dealer is his exact measurements
like
so he can
steal
his suit.
Knocks the living S out of him, steals his drugs and his money, and then goes and I think one of my favorite lines of the whole show.
I know what you're gonna say.
The guy's on the ground, and it's like the I'm Batman moment. You know, he says, "What kind of cop are you?" And this guy, he says, "Sonny, I'm the sheriff." And I'm like, all right, I'm in.
Oh, and everyone swoons.
I'm in on that right now. Because, like, we know the sheriff plays fast and loose with the rules. But, like, he's a G. What do we think? What do we think of the sheriff, guys?
Well, let's reserve judgment.
What do you think, Jamie?
I think he has a lot of potential because he has superhuman strength and
right.
all of these
A lot of
qualities.
A lot of potential.
He can really do some damage if he wanted to.
Oh, man. Can he ever?
Could do some damage. Cut to him in Bettina's apartment about to do some damage. Well, I guess there's some plot moving first, but okay.
Using the
I'm
internet.
in the gutter, yeah.
Using the internet that this computer conveniently has.
That was my favorite line.
Does this computer have the internet? I thought that was really smart.
That was
funny writing.
That was correct. Yeah.
Because that's 100% what both of my parents would say.
That's right.
Does this computer have the internet?
Yep, that's how it works.
but then Mary jumps in to the computer through Looking Glass, and do we think that Looking Glass? So she says your friend has Looking Glass. All right. And not only that, they're looking for his voice pattern on millions of computers.
It's way too powerful.
Are they only? Do you think that that's only specifically to him, or do they have that power for anyone? That
they
want?
have that power. I think
they have
Looking
UAV
Glass,
vehicles, as we saw,
right?
Yeah.
And they are ultimately powerful in a scary way,
Right,
which I think
right.
is why Arthur's going to become scary.
Interesting.
Because I think the twins themselves maybe questionable stuff, but
Sure.
have their hearts in the right place.
Sure.
Aren't doing horrible things with this technology that they've created, but it has all this power.
Right. So we find out that, Jimmy, he looks up pictures from his funeral. He sees that Strayburn himself was carrying his own casket.
Yeah,
his own murderer.
That's rude.
Carrying his own casket.
That's really rude.
That's like kind of a final kick to the nuts.
Bad form.
From beyond the grave. Looking Glass IDs him, and then shortly after that, we see Jimmy doing some damage.
Well, that's right.
Making sure that Bettina has protection first, because as we find out, part of his newfound superpowers is that he is super potent.
He's super potent, but come on, like if you're paying for someone's services, I think they're gonna be using protection no matter what. Like,
I don't think that was in question. You never know. But then we, after they wrap up.
And then wrap up.
And there you go. Nailed it. We see that Duval is coaching Gracie's soccer team, which is, again, one of the things that we talked about with the
she seems 12.
age range.
Yep.
But Jimmy goes and he seeks out Duval. He says, "I knew your father." And he wants to, have a chat with him, have a one-on-one with him.
And the two actors actually look really good as a father and son of the same age-ish or whatever.
Exactly.
But they look kind of similar.
It looks like he's way younger than Duval now.
He's younger, definitely. He got really unfair advantages.
But we see a little bit of kind of Duval's family values, and that Jimmy says, this is important, but Duval says, you know what, so is this. So we'll talk later.
Also, Duval's sister calls him the super dad. So
Exactly.
I think that just really represents who he's trying to be.
Exactly, yeah. When Jimmy goes over to sit in the stands and wait, he starts to fade a little bit. You know, he starts to kind of, you know, fall out of sorts, so to speak.
Faded.
Yeah, exactly. He's faded. And then he sees Helen. He recognizes her briefly before Mary swoops in from out of nowhere.
But thank goodness.
Thank goodness for sure.
Mary, good win.
And Mary, good win. She gets a good win. And she explains that the process is like a transplant, that his body is rejecting it. So what do we think about this limitation being imposed on these superpowers? He essentially runs on a battery now.
That's good. We need that, because otherwise then you're just super powerful
all the time.
Screwing up the world.
Right.
So that's
Absolute
good.
power corrupts absolutely. We know this.
Maybe as time goes on, he might be able to last longer, but for right now, it's just 12 hours.
Sure.
So to speak.
So then she takes him back, throws him in that tank. We find out he's
I don't know that she throws him.
I mean, maybe. Who knows? He's cognizant in the tank. She says,
yeah.
I know you can see me. And just looks up at her.
Yeah, that's odd.
Which is weird.
So you can see and hear from within the juice.
Right. The juice was loose.
So that's a thing.
So then we find out that she found deposits into Strayburn's account after each robbery from this case and texts to Strayburn before each one. How do we think she got this information?
Well, Looking Glass, it's ultimately powerful. What I say.
Right? What do you think, Jamie?
I
You
think
it was
she
Looking
also
Glass?
just knew where to look because she knew Strayburn was guilty, so she could just start there rather
Interesting.
than Duval had no idea Strayburn was guilty, so he wouldn't know to look there.
Do you think that maybe Duval was kind of he had blinders on because Strayburn was his own partner?
I think so, because I don't mean to skip ahead, but he refers to his partner Strayburn as more family than his dad ever was, so I think he never even considered him as a suspect.
Don't consider that guy.
Right.
And it's a big deal to accuse another agent of being dirty.
Yeah, exactly.
And so when it does wrap up at the end there, it's like, that went really smoothly and everyone believed you and it's over with. Whoop, clean.
Right. So we get another conversation between Mary and Otto. Mary explains that this is you going into me, which we were all kind of like, nah, hang on. Phrasing.
Foreshadowing is what I think.
Meanwhile, Otto's watching all this happening. He retreats into his own bedroom from 1988.
Yeah,
which we find out Mary doesn't like. She doesn't like him retreating into his past like that. But, Mary kind of explains that he's on this 12-hour battery. Jimmy's on this 12-hour battery. And she gives him their father's car. And
like you do.
He's digging it. Jimmy goes over to Duval's. He gives him those papers that Mary showed him. And they have this kind of one-on-one where Jimmy realizes kind of how lousy of a father he was and how much Duval resented him.
Yeah, it's weird and it's a little threatening, that whole scene.
Right.
If I'm Duval, I'm like, get away.
Right, exactly. Do we think now Jimmy justified it by saying, he did what he had to do to keep everyone safe? Do we think that Duval's kind of being a little bit unfair?
He's not convinced at all. He says, oh yeah, what you had to do, like planting evidence. So I don't think he even sees that he was trying to protect the people. I think he's just like, whatever, you're a bad father.
Right.
Yeah,
so after that,
from what we know now, it's not unfair. It's perfectly justified.
Right,
Dad
exactly.
sucked.
Exactly, yeah. So after that, he kind of, gets into a rage, goes over to this karaoke bar, gets
in a
drunk,
rage for karaoke,
sings Bad Moon Rising
again,
which I feel gets a way better response than it might have realistically gotten at a party like that.
In the middle of the day.
Like, I don't know if everyone would be super on board with CCR at this big pool party.
Who knows? Who knows?
But he was into it. He had the crowd in the palm of his hand. But then he instantly, in the middle of the song, goes, wait a minute.
You know when those things just occur to you?
When you're singing
Creedence,
when you're singing Creedence and you realize that your son's
dirty partner wasn't working alone.
It goes all the way to the top. I mean, we've all been there.
That was elegant.
So not only that, but then Duval seems to be realizing that too. He calls Helen, and he decides to bring it to the chief, but then the chief turns it right over to Strayburn and says, look, we made a deal with these guys. This needs to go away. And so we realize it's going all the way to the top. we realize that Duval thinks that he may know Jimmy, but doesn't know where from. He realizes that Jimmy was not always faithful to their mom, which I thought was a really heavy point to just gloss over. But they think that Jimmy might be their brother.
Yeah, that's a good reasonable thought.
Right.
I thought that's good for plot.
But then we see the dirty cop Strayburn kidnap Duval at gunpoint because he knows that he knows, and it's going down.
And just once Strayburn goes evil, he just goes super evil immediately and reveals everything. What?
So Jimmy,
no chill.
No chill, zero chill. When we come back from break, Jimmy says, "You know what? You're never done with your kids, Mary. You need to help me find him." And she explains that he only has less than an hour of battery power, and that this is death for good, not only for him, but ostensibly for her as well.
Yeah.
And so. Over in the car with Strayburn and Kearney, I think was the other guy, and Duval. He seems like he's not totally evil. You know, he seems like, you know what, I started with a little bit and you keep getting sucked in, basically. Mm-hmm. He's demanding to know where he got it. But, you know, all the while, Jimmy's chasing him down. He looks for Duval's car. He's not there. He rips the trunk open.
Yeah, more destroying stuff with his bare hands.
He's
on
just
board
the
with
Hulk.
it.
But, you know, Mary says, you know what, they could be anywhere. He says, you know, not anywhere.
They're going to be on this bridge they killed me on.
Now, what do we think it's wise that they bring him to the same bridge that they killed his dad
Well,
on?
if they want to make it look like Duval is killing himself, it's sort of poetic.
Right,
I think so
right. True. Do we think that they
But
care?
also lazy,
They care
but
about
yeah.
poetic justice.
Yeah,
Maybe
they're
it's
really
just
poets.
the most convenient bridge. in
Sure.
town.
That one empty bridge all the time.
So Jimmy knows, he leaps in like a bat
Yeah, he
out
can
of hell,
jump kind of good. That's
and
a nice
just
power.
Beats the hell out of him. He's about to throw Strayburn over the bridge and kill him.
he says-
Duval, the good cop, stops him.
Yeah. But also, Jimmy says, "I told you my son would get you." Like, how confusing!
Right.
What a confusing
Weird.
thing to say.
What a
Yeah,
weird thing.
Strayburn looks absolutely terrified.
Right,
It's like,
right.
I don't know if he even
Like,
thinks
what?
that. Did he
Here's
come
a
back?
strong jumping nutcase.
This jerk talking about. But Duval demands, he says, you know what? If this is my guy, he's going to be my case, and I want to bring the rest of them down.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, don't get rid of your strongest evidence.
exactly.
Your only witness.
So
Yeah.
he stops Jimmy from killing him, and then
Also, probably he can't condone murder this man right in front of
exactly.
me.
And he demands to know from Jimmy, you know, if we took a blood test right now, what would I find?
Yeah, smart.
And Jimmy, he wants to help him, and he wants to let him know, but he's about to die. His battery is just about, it's on like 2%.
Yeah.
You know, he's not doing any texting.
That's right.
He needs to go, and we see the Looking Glass UAV looking like something out of friggin' iRobot.
Seemed unnecessary.
Right. Why does a social media
Looking Glass,
company need this?
maybe you could just self-drive the car you gave him back to you. Silly.
No, we need
Wasteful.
gyrocopters. But then we find out that, you know, Duval has brought the dirty cops to justice, but now he's facing his own trial for how he mercilessly beat the mess out of them. And we find out that he's covering for Jimmy.
Yeah.
So what do we think of that?
I think he's protecting him. He doesn't really know why at this point, but he can tell that there's something up with Jimmy and he wants to save him.
Right,
And obviously
right.
he's on the side of right. He gave him all this information.
Sure. So after that, the final shot, one of the final shots, we see Jimmy in the tank. Mary's looking at him longingly. Otto is not happy with it. When he wakes up, she says, "Do you know who you are?" And he says, "Miss Goodwin, I sure do. I'm Sheriff Jimmy Pritchard." And we cut to black, and let's get to
sheriff.
predictions.
All right.
Let's get to predictions. Hang on.
And now, your AFTERBUZZ TV prediction.
We got to wrap this up quick.
Dang.
Arthur is going to become Skynet. He's going to become sentient.
yeah.
Judgment Day is going to happen. John Connor's going to get sent back from the future.
That's right.
Mary's gonna fall in love with Otto. I mean, oh my gosh!
Oh, no!
I did
Let's
not
hope
mean
not.
that.
Oh, boy.
That would be a very wild twist. Mary is gonna fall
What a
in love
twist.
with Jimmy.
Sure.
Yeah,
sure.
they're setting that up.
And what do we think about that with Jimmy still being a 75-year-old man?
Yeah, there's a lot of conflict of interest there. It's your test subject. I mean, as a scientist, it's scuzzy. Don't do
Right.
that. I would love for Mary to become evil, but
Guys.
I think it's unlikely.
Yeah, an evil fish at that. Man, guys, so much to unpack in this episode and this season. I mean, So much happening. Thank you guys so much for joining me here. Remind everyone where they can find you.
You can find me at JamieBanks_ on Twitter and Instagram.
Hey, I'm Hayley O'Connor on Twitter and Hayley from Earth on Instagram.
And as always, I'm your host, Ty Matthews. You can find me on Twitter, on Instagram, at Ty Matthews PMA, as well as the Monday Night Raw and Pitch Slapped after shows right here on AfterBuzz TV. So next week, we're right back here, 11 p.m., talking about episode 2. But until then, take a chance, guys. Peace!
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
I'll buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.